The asylum's curse. 6 friends gathered around the cracked, ancient sign that read, Crescent Hills Asylum. The building loomed in front of them, its towering spires and jagged windows casting eerie shadows under the pale moonlight. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay. No one had dared enter the asylum in decades, not since it was condemned after the tragic events that took place inside. But that night, they were determined. What started as a dare turned into a challenge none of them could resist. Curiosity, peer pressure, and a thirst for adventure led them to this moment. They stood at the entrance, flashlights in hand, pretending their hands weren't trembling. "Are we really doing this?" Hannah asked, her voice trembling as she hugged her arms to her chest. Her long blonde hair whipped in the cold wind. Tom, the self-proclaimed fearless leader of the group, smirked and nodded. "Of course we are. It's just an old building. What's the worst that could happen?" Liam chuckled nervously. Famous last words. The group hesitated for a moment longer before Tom pushed the door open with a loud, agonizing creak. Inside, darkness swallowed them whole, only the thin beams of their flashlights piercing through the abyss. Dust particles floated in the air, disturbed by their presence. The walls were covered in peeling paint, and the floor was littered with debris. But there was something else, a faint smell of rot, like something long dead but not fully decomposed. "Ugh, what is that smell?" Emily wrinkled her nose, trying to breathe through her mouth. "Probably rats," Mark suggested. "Or something worse." Jenna, usually the most rational of the group, shook her head. "It's just an old building. It probably reeks of mold and old furniture." They ventured deeper into the asylum, their footsteps echoing down the long corridors. Strange graffiti covered the walls, symbols and words they couldn't understand. Occasionally, they heard soft creaks and distant noises, but every time they shone their flashlights in the direction of the sounds, they found nothing. "Okay, this place is seriously creepy," Hannah whispered. "Maybe we should." A loud bang echoed down the hallway, cutting her off. They all froze, their flashlights darting in every direction. "What the hell was that?" Liam asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's probably just the wind," Tom said, though even he sounded unsure now. "That wasn't the wind," Jenna muttered. "It sounded like something heavy fell over." They stood in tense silence, straining to hear any more sounds, but everything had fallen deathly quiet. Too quiet. "Let's just keep moving," Mark suggested. "We've already come this far." As they walked further, they noticed that the temperature seemed to drop the deeper they went. The walls seemed to close in on them, and the shadows became darker, more oppressive. It felt as though the asylum was alive, watching them. Eventually, they came to a large iron door with a rusted plaque that read Ward C. "Should we go in?" Tom asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Liam shrugged. "Might as well. We didn't come all this way to turn back now." Tom pushed the door open, revealing a large room filled with old, rusted hospital beds. Chains dangled from the walls, and the floor was covered in a thick layer of dust. The smell of decay was stronger here, almost unbearable. "This place gives me the creeps," Hannah whispered. Suddenly, Emily's flashlight flickered and went out. She cursed under her breath, smacking it against her palm. "Guys, my flashlight just died." "Mine too," Jenna added as her light blinked out. One by one, their flashlights failed until they were left standing in complete darkness. Panic began to set in as they heard whispers, soft, unintelligible, but unmistakable, coming from the shadows. "Who's there?" Mark called out, trying to sound brave but failing miserably. The whispers grew louder, closer, until they were right in their ears. Cold breath brushed against their necks, sending shivers down their spines. "We need to get out of here," Hannah whimpered, clutching onto Jenna's arm. "Agreed," Tom said. "Let's go." They turned to leave, but the door they had come through was no longer there. In its place was a solid wall, the same peeling paint and graffiti that covered the rest of the asylum. "What the hell?" Liam shouted, slamming his hands against the wall. "Where's the door?" "It was right here." Emily cried, her voice rising in panic. "It's just a trick," Tom said, though he didn't sound convinced. "We'll find another way out." They huddled together, their eyes scanning the darkness, trying to find an exit. But the asylum seemed to shift around them, twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. Corridors appeared where there had been none before, and rooms seemed to stretch on forever. "Are we going in circles?" Mark asked, his voice shaky. "No, the building is changing," Jenna whispered. "It's like it doesn't want us to leave." "Don't be ridiculous," Tom snapped, though his voice wavered. "It's just an old building. There's nothing supernatural going on here." But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. None of them did. Suddenly, a loud, guttural scream echoed through the halls. It was a sound unlike anything they had ever heard, inhuman, tortured, and filled with malice. "Run!" Liam shouted, and they took off down the corridor, not caring where they were going, just desperate to escape the sound. But no matter how fast they ran, the scream followed them, growing louder and more distorted. It felt like something was chasing them, breathing down their necks. Finally, they burst into a large room filled with old medical equipment. The scream stopped abruptly, leaving them panting and terrified. "What was that?" Hannah gasped, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," Jenna said, "but I don't think it's human." "Of course it's not human," Emily cried. "This place is cursed. We never should have come here." Suddenly, the medical equipment began to move on its own. Old, rusted surgical tools lifted off the tables and hovered in the air, slowly turning toward the group. "We need to go, now!" Tom yelled, but it was too late. The tools shot toward them with terrifying speed. They ducked and dodged as best they could, but one of the scalpels grazed Mark's arm, drawing blood. He cried out in pain, clutching the wound. "We're not going to make it out of here," he whispered, his face pale. "Don't say that," Jenna said, though tears were streaming down her face. "We'll find a way out." But deep down, they all knew the truth. The asylum had claimed them the moment they stepped through its doors. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the far end of the room. It was a woman, dressed in an old, tattered hospital gown. Her skin was pale and translucent, and her eyes were hollow black pits. She stared at them, her mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. "Welcome," she whispered, her voice echoing through their minds. "You'll never leave." And with that, the room plunged into darkness once more. The last thing they heard was their own screams as the asylum claimed them, one by one. Weeks later, when authorities finally investigated Crescent Hills Asylum, they found no trace of the 6 friends. The building had collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing but rubble and an eerie silence. But at night, if you stand near the ruins, you can still hear the whispers.
Don't forget to subscribe.